Marx and Engels, I'll close on this. In the preface to their 1848
So
manifesto,
is he saying that socialism? Then I sort of understand why nobody's like a true, real capitalist, cause like, you know, I like this guy. Who's this guy? Wanna know?
Private property.
To be or not to be. If one chooses to live, then one must act in a certain way. One must achieve certain goals, certain values. One must satisfy one's needs. If one does not choose to live, then no action and no values are possible or necessary. One simply sits and waits to die. Life, in other words, is the ultimate goal at the root of all values. Life is a self-justifying primary.
Bitch.
This is why you need a morality. You need a
Go,
moral
go,
code
go,
in order
go.
to know how to
Am I
live.
muted? Like,
And that means that the standard of morality, the abstract
my thing
principle
doesn't
by which
pop
we
up at the
judge
top
good and
right.
evil, is man's life. Every species has a specific means of survival set by its nature.
Fuck
This is a simple
off.
biological fact. Unlike the lower animals, man has the power of choice, but he doesn't have a choice over his basic nature and his basic needs. What is man's means of survival? How does man get his food, his shelter, his safety, his health, and so forth? Well, obviously not by any great strength of muscle or by claw or fang, not by instinct, but by thinking, by reason. Reason, the conceptual faculty, is man's basic means of survival. Now, this is the key to our whole position, so I want to stress this. Reason, thinking, the use of man's intelligence is his means of survival. Man survives not by appropriating pre-existing values the way that animals do, but by creating new values. The means of doing this is productive work, and by production I mean the application of reason to reshaping matter to serve human ends. It is not true, in other words, that wealth exists in some static quantity, like a natural resource.
Oh
so
my
that
god,
when
that
one
was
person
really
gets
close.
more, life is not a zero-sum game. Wealth is created, it isn't found. And the creation of wealth takes knowledge. Knowledge is available only through rational thinking.
No,
Thus,
dude, I kept
reason is man's
missing. He's
only
so
means
lucky.
Of knowledge and therefore his basic means of survival. Look around us.
I need
Right
help.
now,
I
we're
need
in a
fucking help
man-made
here.
world. We're in a man-made environment.
I need
Electric
help.
lights,
Oh my
plastic seats,
god.
clothes from
31?
artificial and
It's not even
natural
fucking
fibers from all
close.
parts of the world, a microphone system. Where did all these things come from? They came from the minds of the scientists who discovered the physical laws involved, from the engineers who found out how to translate that abstract knowledge into working instruments, from the entrepreneurs who risked their capital to bring these things to a market to serve human need, and in addition, the physical labor under the direction of the intelligence of the entrepreneur to produce them. The moving cause here, the basic source of all these things, is not then the physical labor as such. It's not muscle power. It is not that we expend more calories of energy per minute than the caveman, and that's why we are here in an auditorium lit by electricity, and he is in the cave. In fact, we put forth much less muscular labor today than in any time in human history. We even go out of our way to create exercise because we find ourselves doing so little in our work. The actual source of wealth, then, is man's mind, man's rational thinking capacity. Now, it is true that some men can attempt to live without using their minds, but they can do so only by parasitizing the wealth created by those who did choose to think and work. It is still true that man's life depends upon thinking.
That's dropshippers right
even
there.
though
Holy
some
fuck.
people mooch or steal the products of the thinking of others. Those others
Literally
have to
dropshippers. Holy fuck.
Now, a morality whose standard is man's life, then, man's life as a rational, productive being,
Are you kidding me?
cannot permit such parasitism.
The fucking window, bro. Come
does not
on. Like, that's a
advocate
joke.
robber-victim relationship, but independence. Men must deal with each other as independent equals, each man being an end in himself, not the means to the ends of others. Each man must stand on his own, achieve his own values, live his own life, earn his own happiness. He does get, of course, a value from the association with others. He's not a hermit. But there be no mistake about what we're advocating. We are advocating selfishness, rational, egoistic selfishness as the proper code for men to deal with each other. The reason is that selfishness is required by life as such. The opposite of selfishness, which means the achievement of your own values, is the surrender of your values, the sacrifice of a higher value to a lower value, or the sacrifice of a value to a zero, to nothing. Now, that is obviously the antithesis of life.
Can we just not have a tank? Like, where the fuck is my team?
Full surrender of all values would mean death. Anytime you eat a mouthful of food for yourself rather than giving it to some starving
like
Indian
where
beggar,
is
you're doing
my
that on the
team?
principle not
We
of
don't.
altruism or self-sacrifice, but of egoism. Now,
It's
I want to
fine.
be clear, rational
Whatever,
selfishness
bro.
does not mean
Who fucking
sacrificing
cares?
others to yourself. That would be inconsistent. Each man must be selfish. Each man must live his own life. And men must trade value for value when they deal with each other. So we hold that man is born free, not only politically, but morally. You are not born in debt to others. You have no duties to others. You are not obligated to seek their happiness. You are the owner of your own life. Your life is not the means to any higher end. It is the ultimate end. As I said, it's your basic choice to live or not. Man is not a sacrificial animal. And in particular, we emphatically reject the idea that need is a claim. You know the slogan in the advertisement, from each according
what
to his
is this,
ability,
bro?
to each according to his
Like, what is this?
needs. We reject that because it's incompatible with human survival. A
What did he
morality
say?
that's sacrament for a social animal. Now, in particular, you are not obligated to seek their happiness. You are the owner of your own life. Your life is not the means to any higher end. It is the ultimate end. As I said, it's your basic choice to live or not. Man is not a sacrificial animal. Now, in particular, we emphatically reject the idea that need is a claim. You know the slogan in the advertisement, from each according to his ability, to each according to his needs. We reject that because it's incompatible with human survival. A morality that sacrifices ability to need is a morality that holds suffering, lack, disease, impotence, failure as that which entitles one to receive values.
Okay. Maybe I'm just stupid and I'm misunderstanding him. But for now, I'm not really a big fan of this fucking Michael guy. I don't know about him. Like that statement right there, where he said, I gotta rewind this. So he said having suffering, disease, impotence, or lack entitles one to the right of value, or I don't remember the exact quote, something like that. But like, kind of a little bit like disease or like disability, like yes, kind of. I feel like we're not in the fucking like, we're not in the 1700s, bro. We're not in the times of the damn Bible. We got the money, we got the resources, we could help. It's not really being entitled to it or the right. You don't have, I guess, the right. That's too complicated for me right now. But like, if someone is disabled, yeah, they might need a little bit more help. Yes, they're gonna need a bit more help. Like, it's not their fault. Like if you're sick, like fuck COVID-19, bro. Some people needed help there. I'm pretty sure some businesses needed to get bailed out. because they got fucked. Like, it's like shit like that makes me not want to be a capitalist. Uh, I, I'm just not, I just don't really agree with that. I mean, like, I guess it also kind of fucking, it also depends on what you mean by fucking values.
The needs that must be
A
considered are
morality
the
that
needs of the
sacrifices
producers, if
ability
you want
to
to use that
need.
language. What social conditions are required for man to produce wealth? Well, since the production of wealth, I argued, is the reason, there's only one basic thing required. You must respect man's sovereign reason. This
How do
means
you create
one must
wealth?
oppose
You
the
must
use of
respect
physical
man's
force. One must
sovereign
deal with
reason.
other men by persuasion, not by force. So a basic
Persuasion, not
principle
by
of
force.
capitalism is all interactions must be voluntary, because the forced is the anti-mind, and the anti-mind is the anti-life. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Binswinger. Mr. Judas will join the debate.
I was happy to learn that we would be having a debate between socialism and laissez-faire capitalism, because I'm uncomfortable debating capitalism rather than laissez-faire capitalism. Since I stand for a fleeting ideal myself, I prefer to have to contend with another fleeting ideal. I should warn you that my views as a socialist are not necessarily representative of all socialists. In one sense, I'm a radical. In another sense, I'm a conservative. I'm radical, I suppose, in the sense that I don't think that the German Democratic Republic, the East Germany, is either democratic or socialist.
Oh, what
And
the
I'm
fuck hit me that
conservative
I
in the
just
sense that
insta
I
like
think
went
that
down to 2
socialism
health.
itself will evolve out of capitalism and share many of the features of modern
What is he
democratic
doing?
capitalism. Not only the parliamentary system and civil liberties, but also the rudiments of the market and small and medium-scale private property as well. Now, what is the moral basis of socialism as I describe it? Well, I'm going to say something that might seem paradoxical here, and that is that the moral basis of socialism is really no different than that of laissez-faire capitalism.
I just get pushed
Socialism
around.
comes
I'm
out
just
of
getting
the failure
pushed
of laissez-faire
around.
capitalism to realize its own ideals. Those ideals are basically
We don't have a
three.
tank. We
One,
don't.
which Harry
We don't have a
Binswanger
tank.
discussed, is
Nice. I guess we just won't have a tank.
of man himself,
Fucking
of
A,
human beings
guys.
themselves having a higher capability, and of society itself
Fucker.
being structured in such a way as to fulfill that higher capability. It's an ideal that comes from the Greeks, goes through Hegel, the Enlightenment thinkers. The other ideals are those of liberty and equality, and those were born out of the struggle to wrest capitalism out of feudalism. Liberty as the right to be free of inherited obligation, to be born not on a manner in which one's life
Oh
was laid
my god, that's
before
gonna
him,
come back and hit me. I know it
but
is.
to have the possibility of
Ho
doing
ho ho! I had to
different
jump
things
up.
with
I had to
one's
jump
life.
up, bro. I had to jump up.
Equality, again, as being born neither in a particular caste or class, a rough equality, but an equality based on the absence of an aristocracy. Now, these three ideals of what one might call self-creativity, equality,
No, I didn't have my
and
ability,
liberty
and I couldn't turn
were
around,
the
and I have no
ideals that informed
heals.
Jefferson, Jackson, Lincoln, what one might call the democratic tradition in American thought. And the way that they conceived them being fulfilled was in terms of a society of equal small producers, in which each person or family would be roughly equal, would be free, and would have the power to control their own destiny in society. Unfortunately, these dreams were not realized. Instead of a society of small producers, we had a society of large producers, a society of classes, a society in which poverty existed alongside great wealth. In other words, the society that we know as modern capitalism today. And socialism, as an idea of the 19th century, was born precisely out of the understanding that that society of laissez-faire capitalism could never be and that in order to realize it, you would
Double
have to have
tank.
a somewhat different kind of society, one in which human beings themselves owned the means of production, in which there were no classes. Now, here's the difficult part, because, as I said at the beginning, I'm a radical in the sense that I don't think that what we have today in
Oh
the name
my-
of socialism is socialism. And I think we'll get to talk about that a little more in the debate, but let me just briefly
Dude, I need
explain what I'm talking
heals. I need fucking
Marx in the
heals.
early assumed that socialism would arise only in highly industrialized societies with a democratic tradition. Highly industrialized because only in those societies would people have the time, would the productivity exist, in other words, where people would have the time to rule themselves. Democratic because only in those societies would people be educated, both in trade unions and parliament, to rule themselves. But socialist movements first took power not in highly industrialized societies, but in a semi-industrialized nation with a very scant democratic tradition, the Soviet Union, Russia. And socialism itself, as it evolved, came to be not
Oh
so
my
much
God,
a
how long am I gonna
social
fucking
system
reload
after the name of
for?
Marx, but rather a means of vindicating or legitimizing a movement that stood for something quite different for socialism. Most of the societies that call themselves socialism are no more socialist than most of the right-wing movements that call themselves democratic. I'm sure you know there are those.
So they're not real socialists. Okay.
Now, the question is socialism itself, as I'm describing it, possible? Is it possible to fulfill this dream of liberty, equality, and self-creativity? There's a problem not only with existing socialist societies and the pall that they've cast over our notion of what it is to be socialist, but there's a problem, in fact, with Marx himself and the socialists of the 19th century.
Okay.
In my opinion, there's a fundamental error in Marxist thought, and that is what Marx understood, and the heart of what's valuable of Marx is that one society evolves out of the other. It both absorbs part of another society and it negates part of another society. That's going to be true of an economy, of a socialist society. That is, we cannot conceive of what Marx conceived of as a socialist economy was simply the negation of a capitalist economy in which no markets existed and in which economic power would be concentrated in the collectivity. What happened as a result of that is that the collectivity became the state itself became ruled by a political elite, and as Hayek and von Mises and various other thinkers warned, one laid the basis, on behalf of Marxism, one laid the basis for totalitarianism. So what I'm describing as Marxism would have to be, in fact,
Nice.
a
Okay,
mix
I
of
guess I just got
laissez-faire capitalism and
destroyed.
Marxism. What is called in the world today market socialism, but market socialism founded upon democracy. Thank you.
Market socialism is the right one. Or I don't know, but I'm just saying that because that's what he said.
The debate this evening is in essence about two issues. The first issue is why the initiation of physical force is immoral. And the second issue is which social system employs the initiation of physical force and which social system rejects it. Professor Binswanger has addressed himself to the question of what are the standards of moral value that we employ in arguing for capitalism, and I'm going to apply what he has said
Fuck
to the question
you.
of capitalism as a social system. I'd like to start by observing that a society is nothing more than a collection of individuals who are interrelating with each other according to rules, laws, customs, which pertain in that culture. If one asked, what is at the basis of these rules and these laws, one would discover that at the basis of these things lie certain philosophical principles, such as we have been discussing. Principles with regards to the nature of reality, the nature of man, what man's social needs are. That is why philosophical principles are at the heart of a social system. A social system, capitalism, socialism, whatever you like, the essence of these social systems is philosophical principles which underlie them. The fundamental identifying characteristic of any social system is the set of moral and philosophical principles which it embodies. And this debate
Wait,
really is about
say that
the
again?
identifying characteristic of any which underlie them. The fundamental identifying characteristic of any social system
of
is
any social
a set
system
of
is
moral
a
and
set of
philosophical
moral,
principles which it embodies.
philosophical. Wait, fuck, dude. Okay. Like, I understand what he's saying, but I need to remember that.
A social system, capitalism, socialism, whatever you like. The essence of these social systems is philosophical principles which underlie them. The fundamental identifying characteristic of any social system
The fundamental identifying characteristic of any social system
is
is
a set of moral and
a set of moral, philosophical
principles which it
principles
embodies.
which it
This
embodies.
debate really, if we would ask ourselves, what is the government? What is the state as a social institution? What is its essential defining characteristic? We would see that the essential defining characteristic of government is that it is that social institution that has a legal monopoly over the use of force in society. That is what government is.
I need to do that again, but
to any social system, therefore,
say that again?
Over the use of the essential defining characteristic of government.
The
is
essential
that it is
defining
that social
characteristic of
institution
government
that has
is
a legal monopoly over the use of force in society.
it's the
That is what
institution that
government
has a legal
The central
monopoly
question
over
with
the
regards
use
to
of
any social
force.
system, therefore,
Okay,
is
I
what are the
understand.
principles dictating the way that the state relates to its individual citizens. Now, what would a moral social system be? A moral social system would be one which was based on pro-life principles, one which was based on the values that human life requires, one that serves man's life rather than destroys man's life, one in which the government is limited in its functions to the social requirements of human life.
Bucky is just
In other
caring.
words,
Oh my
the
god.
moral social system would be one which acknowledged and protected man's fundamental social need, which is for freedom from the initiation of physical force in a social context. Now, it is the concept of man's rights which captures man's need to be left free from the initiation of physical force on the part of his neighbors when he deals with them in society. It is man's right to life, liberty, private property, and the pursuit of happiness, which morally sanctions his need for freedom.
I need to
Individual is a
rewind. I need to
sovereign entity.
rewind.
His life belongs to him. It does not belong to anybody else, and it is immoral of anybody else or any social institution to attack him, to violate his rights, and force him to live for the needs of others. Man needs freedom to act. He cannot be physically barred from acting once he has decided through the irrational use of his mind on the goals he wishes to pursue. And if he should succeed in his actions, in gaining values, he needs the right to own those values and to retain them for his own use. He needs the right to private property. Without property rights, no human life is possible. The principle of man's rights is the bridge from morality to the question of the moral social system. The only moral social system, therefore, is the system which is based on the recognition of man's rights.
The only moral social system is the system that recognizes man's individual rights.
Where the government is limited to this function, where it never
I like this guy. Who's this guy? I want to know.
Private property. Without property rights, no human life is possible. The principle of man's rights is the bridge from morality to the question of the moral social system. The only moral social system, therefore, is the system recognition of man's need to be free.
Is the system which recognizes man's
based on the recognition of man's rights, on the recognition of man's need to be free from physical force. The only moral social system, therefore, is the system which is based on the recognition of man's rights, on the recognitions of man's
need to be free from physical force. I see. I like this guy. I need to remember that.
Of man's rights.
The recognition of man's rights and the recognitions of man's
On the recognition of man's need to be free.
okay. On the recognition of man's rights and the recognitions of man's needs to be free of physical force. Okay. I'm pretty sure this guy's a socialist, but he's kind of spitting though.
Free from physical force. The only moral social system is that social system where the government is limited to this function, where it never initiates force in order to violate the rights of its own citizens, where it supplies the police, the armed forces, and the courts for dealing with rights violations, and in which it has no economic functions whatsoever. Just as state should be separated from church, state should also be properly, totally separated from economics. Now, the proper definition of capitalism as a social system is to identify the fundamental principle underlying capitalism. The fundamental moral principle underlying capitalism is the sovereign individual and his right to his own life.
Okay, he's a capitalist. He's a capitalist.
Therefore, the proper definition of capitalism is it is the social system based on the uncompromising recognition and protection of individuals' rights. This is a definition in terms of fundamentals. Now, the socialists define capitalism as a social system where there is wage labor and where there is private property in the means of production. These are derivatives. It is true that there is private property in the means of production. It is true that there is wage markets, a market for wage labor. But these are expressions of every individual's right to act on in his own interests and trade accordingly and voluntarily with his fellow men. So to identify capitalism as a social system exhibiting wage labor and private ownership of the means of production is superficial. The fundamental and proper definition of capitalism is that it protects every man's right to his own life. The implications of properly defining capitalism are, first of all, that there is in a true capitalist society no connection between economics and politics. Economic power, which is earned by producers by virtue of their ability to produce values which other people will buy, is a positive. It is a benefit to everybody to have present in our society people who are capable of earning economic power. Political power, on the other hand, is based on the power of a gun, on the power of the government to actually violate men's rights, coerce them, expropriate their property, and it is a negative. And there is no connection in a capitalist social system, if it's properly understood, between business and government. Secondly, there is no advocation in capitalism of the right to goods per se. People only have the right to act freely. They do not have the right to the goods of others. There is no such thing as a right to a job, in other words, to force another person to give you a job, a right to an education, in other words, to force another person to give you an education, or a right to any such possessions at all. Now, given this, it is obvious that capitalism has never yet fully existed in human history. It lies ahead rather than
You can't force someone to give you an education.
In Britain, in the United States, are the closest approximations of it, and we see great productivity.
Like when he says that, does that,
the moral is the
like
practical.
what if you
But
try and
today
force
we
the
have no
government to give
examples
you
of
an
capitalism
education?
in
Does
the
that
world.
count?
We only have
I need to rewind.
capitalism has never yet full right to an education, in other words, to force another person to give you an education, or a right to any such possessions at all.
So like yeah, when he says that, like, so is he also saying like you can't force the government to give you a education? Because if that is, then I sort of understand why nobody's like a true, real capitalist. Because like, you know, you kind of want everybody to have an education. Like if you can't force the government to give you an education, and you don't have anybody else around you to give you an education, like what are you supposed to do, you know? Unless that's not what he's talking about, and I'm just too stupid. It's probably what it is, though. It's probably the latter.
This, it is obvious that capitalism has never yet fully existed in human history. It lies ahead rather than behind. The 19th century, in Britain, in the United States, are the closest approximations of it, and we see great productivity and benevolence. The moral is the practical. But today we have no examples of capitalism in the world. We only have mixed systems, which in fact are systems of incompatible principles. Principles of statism, such as the socialists put forward, and some vestiges of freedom. Now, it is my view that
So he wants a
having
true
completed
capitalism.
our comments, that we as capitalists have done what is required of us, which is to make a case for capitalism. That is our case for capitalism is the only moral system available to man. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ridpath. Mr. Hitchens will be making the final 8-minute statement.
Thank you, Professor.
Dumbass. Fuck
I
out of
think
here.
that the organizers of this meeting are to be congratulated
Oh!
on their brio and also, I think, on their timing. We are met today as witnesses of the decomposition of a political regime in this capital city, which uses the language of capitalism and of free enterprise, employs the ideology of selfishness and self-interest, and stresses the rhetoric of laissez-faire, while bloating and expanding the role of the state, debauching the treasury and the currency, and relying upon a state within a state for the secret conduct of most policy. There may, and I think there will not be, any convergence of ideas between socialist and capitalist schools this evening, but this need not prevent us, I think, from seeing that a regime may combine the basest features of statism and collectivism with the basest elements of utilitarianism and libertarianism too. And I think if we recognize that, we may have ground for debate. What is it, I better get on with it, to be a socialist? Necessary conditions,
Oh, he's a socialist, okay.
rather than sufficient ones, must include the following. It is necessary to hold, firstly, that all divisions of class, nation, race, and sex are, in the last resort, man-made and can be man-made, are in no sense part of a divine or natural ordinance.
That's
and that
good,
we are
yes.
members, like it or no, of one race, the human race.
Yes, true.
That civilization is, in fact,
Keep spitting.
a cooperative enterprise. Whether the cooperation is coerced, as it was in most of recorded history, or voluntary, as has been occasionally found and can still be found in our century. But that it is a cooperative enterprise cannot be denied. There is no other means, that's to say, of civilization. Third, that the limits of creative endeavor are set by the limits of nature, and that very few human actions can therefore be said in the last instance to be entirely private. The earth is, in point of fact, a common treasury, as the English levelers used to say in the Puritan Revolution, hoping that it was so. It is, in fact, the case, and again, whether we like it or not, whether we care to treat it as such or not. Fourth, that there is no God and no supernatural, that this recognition
That put that in
obliges
there.
us morally to maximize the felicity of the one life that we are permitted. And fifth, that the principle of from each according to his ability or her ability, and to each according to his or her need, is an easily realizable one, prefigured already in human society by the working principles of the bourgeois family. That unique engine of thrift,
Sheesh.
enterprise, the transmission of morality, operates precisely on the principle of from each according to his or her
Easy.
ability, and to each according to his or her need. There is, in fact, no other way that a family could decently or possibly be run. I make no moral judgment as between the decency and the possibility. Such a distinction would be odious. Marxists describe freedom as the recognition of necessity, and only then proceed to say that the free development of each is the condition for the free development of all. Marxists describe freedom as the recognition of necessity.
Marxists described freedom as... Well, let me just get rid of that.
And only then proceed. Marxists describe freedom as the recognition of necessity.
As the recognition of
proceed to say
necessity.
That the free development of each is the condition for the free development of all.
The free development of each is the free development of all.
That the educator must be educated. That's
Mhm.
why I stress the above as necessary conditions rather than sufficient ones. We do not ask for these things to be true. We might even prefer them not to be, but we must recognize them as given and as such. Sufficient conditions, I think, center on the question of class. Marxists recognize that history is indeed the contest of competing social forces, and that so is the present such a competition. All attempts to describe society as merely organic and harmonious, or as a free competition or race between individuals with differing attainments and endowments, fail, because they ignore this simple and obvious fact, which again we do not preach, we simply recognize, insist upon, and make as a point of departure. Let me, if I may, quote you from Marx and Engels' preface to the German Ideology in 1845, where they say that they and their supporters, and I'm quoting now, "We do not preach morality at all. They do not put to people the moral demand, love one another, do not be egotists, etc. On the contrary, they are very well aware that egoism, just as much as selflessness, is in definite circumstances a necessary form of the self-assertion of individuals."
Fuck
This shows
you!
clearly enough that Marxists understand what Randians term, as if they discovered it, the virtue of selfishness. But as Marx and Engels also wrote in the same period in their Holy Family, they saw the need for selfishness to be transcended. I'm quoting again directly from the Holy Family, 1845 also. "If enlightened self-interest is the principle of all morality, man's private interest must be made to coincide with the interest of humanity. If man is shaped by environment, his environment must be made human. It is on this apparent paradox that we take our stand." And against the neo-Kantians, the early Marxists argued that morality could not be derived from abstract first principles of recht or right, but had to correspond to the real conditions of society. Nowadays, I think this argument seems quaint in its intensity and fervor, because evolution itself, and
Wait, I'm still in.
the evolution of modern capitalism,
I thought my team was in there, and then I'm
into
still
a
in
new
the fucking
symbiosis with the state,
wind
has borne in upon the
bullshit.
dullest mind the recognition that if humanity does not yet think in terms of a common destiny, it has at least had to think in terms of a common fate. To put it at its most vulgar materialist level, we are all collectivized by the same ozone layer. The thermonuclear world is a great leveler, and just as there can be no purely moral, conscientious objection in a thermonuclear conflict, nor can there be any merely ethical or self-interested collaboration with it. Everybody, after all, in this
There it
auditorium
is.
is a uniformed conscript. You cannot conscientiously object to the nuclear conscription that has made of each of you soldiers and put you in the front line while the real soldiers are in the bunker. This recognition of reality enforces a sense of collective humanity upon us. Again, we do not preach this, we recognize it. Socialism, said Oscar Wilde, would free us from the distressing necessity of living for others. The feelings of compassion and solidarity and responsibility, after all, are no less instinct in our species than those of self-interest. It's precisely because these instincts of solidarity and compassion represent a human need, a need to be of help to others, a point very well made by Professor Richard Titmuss in his famous book, The Gift Relationship. Because they are a need, there is no need to make the sentimental presumption of altruism or to wrestle with the tautology that altruism represents. Marx and Engels, I'll close on this, in the preface, altruism or to wrestle with the tautology.
The belief in or practice of disinterested and selfless concern for the well-being of others. Wait, what? Okay, so altruism is just being a good person. Altruism is the concern for the well-being of others independently of personal benefit or reciprocity, however you say that. Yeah, so it's just being a good person, is it not? Like you're just doing it to, you're not doing it for any any gain. You're just doing it to do it. To help. Okay. I see.
Precisely because these instincts of solidarity and compassion represent a human need, a need to be of help to others, a point very well made by Professor Richard Titmuss in his famous book, The Gift Relationship. Because they are a need, there is no need to make the sentimental presumption of altruism or to wrestle with the tautology that altruism represents. Marx and Engels, I'll close on this, in the preface to their 1848 manifesto.
Is he saying that socialism, in socialism, you don't need to be like, yo, be a good person. Like, you don't need to say that because like in socialism, you're already helping everybody, you're already living, or you're already working for the benefit of others, or whatever the fuck. I'm gonna have to rewatch this like 6 different times to really understand what Hitchens is saying. Like, this shit is bad. Like, this is one of the problems. Like, this is bad, bro.
And as this is your waste, you should be the one cleaning up here. My name is Freehat.
My name is Fosenanim. My name is Richard Adumbila.
My name is Rahel.
My name is Godson Maulidogan.
My name is Bright Anochi. I'm into environmental studies, so if I'm not here right now, I'll be in my study room studying.
I'm a photographer, so maybe I'll be on the street shooting.
I should have been in the gym.
I'll be home watching movies.
I'm an acrobatic artist. If I'm not here, I'll be rehearsing.
Those fucking brands,
they have to reduce their production. What they are doing is affecting all of us. They have to make us know the amount they are.
Like, this is definitely one of the problems of capitalism right here.
When you come to our beaches, you cannot even feel free to do anything that can make you feel free.
It's going to have negative impact on all of us. It should be a warning. The fast fashion needs to stop.
You're not really into politics. Okay, it's fair enough. But what are you into? Transformers? Pokemon, you fucking child? Sorry, but this election affects you in ways you couldn't possibly imagine. But also in quite a few ways that even your pot-addled teenage brain can manage. Yeah, soaring youth unemployment in a job market saturated with unpaid internships, filled with jammy little fuckers who have daddy helping with the rent. Tuition fees have tripled, no help with housing if you're under 21, huge cuts to youth services and youth mental health services. Fucking brilliant. You're not really into politics. Okay, it's fair enough. But what are you into?
Like, man, the common people, bro. Then here's another one. Where's the other one? Here he is.
I'm extremely suspicious of normal people. I think that they're devious for the most part. Because they're lying. The only way that you can be normal in a society like this is to be complicit with things that are inhuman. Joseph Conrad said, I think, in Heart of Darkness, that the devil of our age is not satanic and diabolical. He's this flabby, mediocre creep.
Exactly.
Nothing special about him, and people are fools to fall for all his tricks because they're not very good tricks. This morally indifferent and complacent, lazy-minded, passive hordes of people just waiting for who knows what.
Exactly, bro. Like, nobody spat harder bars than that. Like, just wait, what is this? Oh, more posts from this bitch. But I mean, man, like, he's spitting. They're not fucking wrong. Like, I'm suspicious of normal people.
Well, your president won't help you not hate brown folks. They won't make your troubles disappear. They can't change the fact you're broke. They won't turn everyone woke. There ain't a whole lot they can do to make you less a slave to fear. It's your president, but it ain't your picnic. No, it's a great big club, and honey bunches, we ain't in it. You and me, we ain't the ones to please. No, they they got oligarchs and lobbyists and billionaires and gods and kings. Well, your president won't help you love your neighbor. They can't help you find inner peace. They won't change your mind. Them changes start inside, and that's outside their jurisdiction. Well, for now, at least, it ain't your president, and it ain't your picnic. No, it's a great big club, and honey bunches, you ain't in it. You and me, we ain't the ones to please. Now they got oligarchs and lobbyists and billionaires and gods and kings and thieves and things you can't see.